Welcome to Next to Madison, a podcast to help you live your best life.
Welcome back to another fun episode of Next to Madison. I am your host, Madison Malloy, and on this episode, I am sitting down with author and businessman Lloyd Roberts, where we are talking about his new book, G Cubed, which is his formula for personal fulfillment, which involves gratitude, growth, and giving. He breaks down these three areas. He talks about what success means, and he talks about what really the purpose of life is and how we can all start feeling more fulfilled and happier every day in a world that is constantly putting pressure on us to do certain things or to live a certain way or to think a certain way. It is so important that you really understand your true purpose and that you're grateful for what you have and that you are fulfilled, because outside circumstances will always change. But if you can really know how to fulfill yourself and feel fulfilled, you can struggle well. And he gets into this amazing formula for how to do it. So you're not going to want to miss this episode. We will be right back after this brief episode on Next to Madison with our guest. Enjoy.
It's your host, Madison Malloy, and I have exciting news. My new product is now available on Amazon called Color Your Way to Abundance, a 21-day manifestation guide for wealth, health, and love. This unique coloring journal will help you manifest by coloring in the affirmations while you continue to repeat them. This will help activate these affirmations so they become a reality. Grab your copy today and relax, color, and start manifesting.
We're back with our amazing and inspirational guest on this episode of Next to Madison. I am so happy to have Lloyd Roberts here. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for the opportunity to be here with you today.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to talk about your new book, which is unbelievable. But I first want to just start with, give the audience a couple minutes of just your background, because you have a very impressive background.
Well, thank you. So yeah, I live out here in Utah. Had a fun little run in a variety of categories, but boy, I was born with something called cystic fibrosis. So was my older brother and younger sister. My younger
Wow.
sister's recently passed away from it,
I'm
and
sorry.
born blind in my right eye and poor vision in my left eye, and went completely blind a little while ago with a corneal ulcer. So that was an interesting experience, but definitely grew through that one. And you know, in certain categories, had certain things that were difficult for me. For example, when I was a senior in high school, I could read at the fifth grade level. And boy, I went down a water slide. And this is one of those slides that goes down about 60 feet and that you're
Uh-huh.
just free falling the whole way. And the lady that went down right before me exceeded the weight limit by about 50 pounds. So when she went down the water slide and reconnected, she snapped the slide in half, and
Oh,
it chopped off her left gluteus maximus, and the last part of the top didn't see this happen, and so she sent me down next, and I of course went down and saw there was some kind of problem, but I'm already free falling. There's not much I could do. My left foot went down into the gap and it ripped my foot off and snapped my femur in half, took some chunks out of my hand. And so yeah,
oh,
life's been a crazy adventure on all kinds of sides. Started lots of business, had a lot of failures in business. Um, was
wow.
born sterile, so wasn't able to have any. The doctors told me I wasn't able to have any children, and that's all kind of on one side of things. And on the other side, boy, I've had just an amazing journey. I have a wonderful wife, had a great childhood, uh, four beautiful miracle children, two sets of twins. I just have my oldest set just decided to go down to Argentina for the next 2 years and share the good news down there. So we miss them, but we're excited for them.
Yeah.
And in the business world, my two brothers and I, we've started a series of businesses over the years. And, we've had our own level of wins and losses, but really we've taken the profits from business one and fed them into business two, and so on, two to three, and three to four, and four to five. And the one that we're most known for is recently we launched a business called Loan Pro. It's a loan servicing software, kind of a business to business play. We have about
Uh-huh.
13 to 14% of all Americans are in the platform through one lender or another. We have over 1,000 lenders that use us as their back end on loan servicing, loan collections, data processing, everything on the back end of loan management. So that's been a fun play. About 3 years ago, we did the largest Series A capital raise in our state's history for $100 million. We've grown about 3x since that date, even though the fintech world's taken a little bit of a hit. We've done very well in that window. And about 2 years ago, I retired from Loan Pro and thought, you know what, there's even more out there that I'm passionate about, and wrote a book called G Cube that focuses in on personal fulfillment and how all of us,
Yeah.
regardless of what divides us, our age, gender, race, religion, sexual orientation, political association, whatever those things might be, what there has to be a formula that anybody can use to become truly fulfilled. And the truth is, I was talking with my sister one day. This is about a month or two after we had the $100 million cash in in infusion,
Uh-huh.
and it was fun. But I was driving home one day and I was thinking, man, I thought that a ton of capital was the missing piece in the overall equation of me being fulfilled. And don't get me wrong, it's great to have a lot of money, but
Yeah.
really it's just a magnifier of who you already are. And I was thinking, I was happy about it, but in the same way that you're kind of happy about your team winning the big game a month ago or 3 months ago, right? I mean, you're
Yeah.
happy about it, but it's not like the number one thing on your mind. And I was
Right.
having these thoughts like, oh man, I don't really think this is the missing piece. And my little sister gave me a call and asked, how I was doing. She said she's doing fine. We talked for about 5 minutes, and I can't remember about what. But then I heard this beeping in the background. And so I'm like, wait a minute, Susie, where are you? And she said, well, I'm in the hospital. And I said, you said that you were doing good when we started this call. And she said, well, as soon as your fever gets over about 105, your body relaxes. So I'm doing better now. And she's since passed away from cystic fibrosis. But only about 10 minutes later, I got a
So
call from
sorry.
somebody else. Oh, thank you. And I got a call from somebody else, and you know what? They are attractive and in a beautiful marriage and beautiful children, and seemingly winning in life. And they were really worked up by something relatively small, and it was really getting under their skin. And they were their day was a mess because of it. And I got off that call, and I really found the contrast between these two situations to be compelling. One
Yeah.
circumstances were literally dire, but she was at peace and was fulfilled. And the other one had relatively amazing circumstances overall. And because of what they were focusing on, they were miserable. So it kind of took
Yeah.
me on my own little journey here on personal fulfillment and trying to really figure out what the formula was.
Yeah.
Probably the most recent adjustment is we started a nonprofit, a public charity called Become More. I believe that's the objective of this life, is to become more of
Yes.
a version of ourselves, or become more like God, however you want to say it.
Yeah.
And so our objective with the charity is twofold. One is a formula for fulfillment, hence the book, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about it. And
Yes.
the intention is to have it be a formula that anybody can use to become truly fulfilled in this life. And second is a formula
Amazing.
for poverty reduction. Isn't it kind of weird that we spend billions a year on trying to reduce poverty, and we haven't done it yet, right?
Yeah.
So we're taking it from a business perspective, and we're adopting villages in the remote areas of Cambodia, and we're focusing on health and education and creating savings through animal husbandry. Just about 2 months ago, we adopted the fourth village, and the objective is to publish a formula here in about 3 to 4 years. The data will show before adopting villages, during, and then 2, 3, 4, 5 years into the process, what the poverty reduction process has looked like. And
Wow.
have it be a formula that other third world countries or developing countries can use in the rural areas as a starting point for their own poverty reduction. So there's a wide
Excellent. Yeah. Yes. I mean, you have such a diverse, amazing, impactful background. But let's get into the book. So I want to go to, was that the inspiration when you were talking to your sister who's seemed happy but is in the hospital in a dire condition, and then your friend that called you who sounded like he was upset over something that really didn't matter? So was that kind of the pivotal moment for you that said, you know what, I gotta create a formula and get this out to the world?
Yeah, well, I didn't really want to create a formula. I've never written a book before. I just wanted to get the formula, right? I mean, for example, I've owned a
Yep.
software company, but I'm not a programmer. So
Right.
just to bless you with the
Thank
choice
you.
of heaven. So my objective was really just to go find the existing formula because clearly there's people in this world that are fulfilled. So I just wanted to go and say, hey, you're fulfilled. What's your formula?
Yeah.
Right. So that was really my objective. I viewed it more like, hey, go find a baker that makes a delicious cake and say, sweet, you figured it out. What was the recipe for that exact cake? But when I went to, the seminars and listened to the podcasts and, frankly, for about a year and a half, I put entertainment media aside and really leaned into this. And I felt I felt like there was a division between religion and fulfillment because so
Hmm.
let's put salvation over here for a second. I think that all of us could agree that regardless if somebody attaches their wagon to a specific religion or no
Right.
religion for that matter, that some people that there's a pocket, there's people in all different types of religions that have found fulfillment. But yet, in those exact same religions, there's other people that are miserable. So that was very
Yeah.
interesting to me. Like the person in front of you in the pew before you, they can be so fulfilled, and the people right behind you or beside you can be so miserable. And so I
Yeah.
felt like there's just really two important things. Let's put salvation over here for a minute and let's just lean into fulfillment. How is it that we can become truly fulfilled right now? And so, but I felt like when I would go listening to these amazing people, let's call them chefs in the fulfillment category, that the conversation more went like this. Hey, have you heard about sugar? Oh, let me tell you about amazing sugar and all the things you can do with it. And oh, what about flour? Oh, what about eggs? And all of these amazing ingredients. But when you got down to the brass tacks and said, that's great, these ingredients sound wonderful, what's your recipe for making your cake? Because that thing looks delicious.
Yeah.
The answer was always, oh, well, we want to talk about the ingredients because all of us humans are different. You got to figure out your own recipe. And that just didn't really resonate with me. Why do I need to figure out my own recipe when eternal law
Right.
is something that could apply to all of us? And so that's when really I leaned into great. There has to be a fulfillment formula or a recipe that all of us could use.
Yeah. Okay. And so what is that?
Well, my pitch is that it's G cubed. And the G's are three G's. So the first G is gratitude,
Hmm.
second G is growth, and the third G is giving. Yet, and so I'd love to talk about these three a little bit more, but really it's in the formula of G cubed, not gratitude plus growth plus giving. And I believe that our unconscious or our subconscious minds do the math like we're in high school, right? Let's
Yeah.
pretend that we have three classes and three grades, right? And then in the class of gratitude, you get an A, and the class of growth, you get a B. In the class of giving, you get a C. We innately go, oh, I got an A, B, and a C. My GPA or my average is a 3.0 or a B. And yet we don't feel like a B. If you have an A in gratitude and a B in growth and a C in giving, you would think that you would feel like a B overall in fulfillment.
Right.
The summation formula, you would. But the truth is, it's just not the summation formula. And so if we think it is, we don't question the only thing we should be questioning, the actual formula itself. We just think that, I should feel like a B, and I don't. I feel more like a D. Man, I'm broken. The formula is not broken. I'm broken. And I think all that happens at a subconscious level. And it's sure hard to want to raise one of your G scores when you feel like you're the problem or that you're broken, not the formula. But my pitch is that it's not the summation, rather, it's the multiplication, right? That there's
Okay.
an
Yeah.
invisible multiplier inside this formula. And you can call this multiplier God, grace, Mother Earth, Mother Nature, the universe, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't change the multiplying effect that happens with this. And so if we tie a number to each one of the G's, and let's say if you get an A, that's a 5, right? And a B is a 4, and let's say your average levels of gratitude are a 3, and if you're doing poor, you're at a 2 or a 1, right? And
Yeah.
so you got a score on all of these three G's. You get anywhere between a 5 and a 1. Well, if you get a 5 and a 4 and a 3, and you sum them together, then you're like, okay, well, I should have about a B level of fulfillment. But if you get a 5 times 4, great. Okay, I got 20 times 3, I got 60. And you need 100 fulfillment points to be truly fulfilled. So no wonder if you're getting
Right.
60 fulfillment points, no wonder you feel like you're kind of at a D level of fulfillment, because that's how the multiplication formula works.
Yeah.
But the objective isn't to say that that, oh, you're no good, your score's low, but rather it's a call of action at the highest level to put in an ounce of effort so that you can get out that pound of results, right? If you, let's say you have a 3 in the giving category and you step that up to a 4, well, now you go from 60 fulfillment points to 80. And now you literally went from a D to a B.
Yeah.
Or what if you went from 3 to 5? Well, now you go to 100 fulfillment points. Even though you still have a 4 in the growth category, because perfection's not required, you can have your low score be a 4 and the other two be 5, and achieve the 100 fulfillment points. You don't need the 5, 5, and 5 to be truly fulfilled.
That's amazing. So let's talk about gratitude because I talk about that a lot in the work that I do in my books and on this podcast and how it is so important. So, what is your daily gratitude practice? Because I always say it's important to have a daily gratitude. If you're not thankful for what you already have in your life and all the miracles that God's given you, how on earth do you expect Him to give you more?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, gratitude's first on purpose. I mean, it's if your heart is full of gratitude, there's a little that can get you down, right? It's very, very important. And people do all kinds of things,
Yeah.
gratitude journals and
Yeah.
all kinds of wonderful and crazy things. Most of them work. But I like to think about gratitude as something that happens to us organically enough that we're tricked that we have to wait for it to happen to us organically, right? So, somebody comes and compliments you on a physical feature or your eyes or whatever, or on your spirit or your energy. And you're like, oh, wow. You're kind of, flattered by it, or, oh, wow, that felt good. Or maybe your team wins the big game, or maybe you make a big sell and, your big commission's going to
Yeah.
come in. These things organically happen through our circumstances enough that we subconsciously are waiting for our circumstances to dictate our gratitude level, right? So to me, I've had certain times that I've been able to trick my unconscious mind, right? Effectively doing, I'm happy, I'm happy, I'm happy, just think happy and I'll be happy, right? And sometimes that works too. But there's always this undertone of, oh, I'm just kind of faking it, and this feels phony and forced, and it's kind of hard to get into. So when it comes to the category of gratitude, here's my biggest hack that
Okay.
I've, right? What is the inverse? What's the complete opposite of gratitude? And a lot of people say a lot of different things when I ask that question. So I'd ask your listeners to think about it for a minute. What is the opposite of gratitude? My belief that the opposite of gratitude is entitlement. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
think about it for a minute. We live in a world, especially in America or any of the overdeveloped countries like America, where we are sold on every form of media that there is, all the things that we're entitled to. Right now, I'm not making the pitch that we're not entitled to stuff, right? I'm entitled to not have somebody walk in here right now and shoot me, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's
Right.
some basic things that I'm entitled to. But what if for just a moment we made the cognizant choice to believe that we are entitled to zero, like literally nothing?
Mm.
Like as no entitlement to any money in my bank account, or my wife giving me a kiss when I get home, or my kids getting excited, or food on the dinner tonight, or the temperature in this room, or the air in my lungs. The list goes on and on. Like, what if you literally decided I am entitled to zero? Well, then I'm not required to grab all my entitlements and hold them tight to my chest, almost looking to see if somebody's going to steal them from me today, just to return home to realize that most likely nobody touched my entitlements. But that doesn't give me a sense of fulfillment. It rather just, at best, I feel like nobody stole from me today. and I'm still in that lousy state. But if I let go of
Yeah.
my entitlements and I realize I'm entitled to zero, now it's almost like a negative vacuum, and you're like sucking out the entitlement out of you. And without even trying, gratitude fills in all the little crevices, and you don't even have to choose to be grateful. You just are present, and you're like, taking a big deep breath of air and looking at the mountains and the leaves on the trees, and just excited to be in the moment, because everything becomes a gift, because you have nothing, you are nothing, and so now everything you experience becomes a present.
I love the way you explain that. It's almost like you're so much happier in life when you have zero expectations. You know, those
Yes.
nights when you go out and you're expecting it to be a great night and you put on a great outfit and then you're like, eh, it was okay. It's just because your expectations were so high. But if you don't expect anything, like no entitlements of having a good time, no entitlements of certain people being there, then yeah, you're fully in the present moment and you're just
Well, I don't know if I've
happy.
ever put on an amazing outfit before, but I get your point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, one of my heroes, Tony Robbins, he always says, trade your expectations for appreciation, and your whole life will change in an instant.
I
Right. And this
love that.
still, it's the same general concept, right? When we have expectations, another word for entitlements, if they're
Hmm.
not met, we feel pain. Expectation, reality, this space is pain. Expectation, reality, this space is pleasure, right? If we
Yeah.
exceed our expectations, we're like, woohoo, yay, whatever. But if we don't exceed our expectations, that gap, and the larger the gap, the more pain that we experience. We just don't
Yeah.
realize oftentimes that we are in control of our expectations. We actually have the ability to root out our expectations, or in other words, trade our expectations for gratitude, and literally that fast. Like, you don't have to wait for an amazing spouse. You don't have to wait for a fat bank account or an amazing body, or fill in the blank with something wonderful that might be an expectation. You literally in this moment can say, wow, I'm going to root out my entitlement. Not I'm going to choose to be grateful. Rather, I'm going to root out entitlement. And you don't even choose to be grateful. It naturally fills in those gaps as you make the choice to root out entitlement.
Excellent. So well said and explained in such a different way than I've heard it. So I love that. So thank you for that. All right. So
Yeah,
let's go on to number two, which is growth.
awesome.
People
Yeah,
always have
growth.
to be growing. I always tell people if you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing.
Yeah. People often look at people with success and they say, "Oh, that person's a grower. They've done it. What did you do?" Right? I want success. I would just call out that growth is independent from success,
Mhm.
although success is often the byproduct of sustained growth. So there is clearly a link. One day I was at my brother's cabin, and he has a second home by Bear Lake, and it's a beautiful turquoise lake, and they're up kind of on the hill, and so it's a little distance away. And I
Yeah.
saw this white line on the water, and I couldn't actually figure out what it was. So I grabbed some binoculars and I looked out there, and I realized that, oh, there was a boat, and there's a speedboat, shooting across the lake. And what I actually saw with my naked eye was the wake behind the boat. I saw the success. I didn't see the actual growth. Yet, if the growth
Ah.
stopped, the wake would quickly stop behind that. And oftentimes in our own life, people from a distance will look and they'll see our success and they'll go, "Oh wow, you built a tech unicorn. Oh, you have a beautiful family. Oh, whatever the things are." They see the successes, but they rarely can see the growth that is driving that success. And that's where it all leans into, is the actual growth component. Now, of course, it could be something that's flashy in the growth
Uh-huh.
category, but it could be very simple too. It really could just be taking the class, or putting the bottle down, or planting the garden, or weeding the
Yeah.
garden, reading the book, or whatever it is. This is the process of progress, aka growth. And that's what gives us the actual endorphin release of knocking out our to-do list or
Uh-huh.
accomplishing something. That process of accomplishment or completing something is the growth that I'm talking about.
Yeah. Very well said. Absolutely. Yeah, because I always say if you're not growing, you're dying. So
Yes.
you got to constantly push yourself outside of that comfort zone. Success is not, it's earned. The rent is due
Yes.
every day. And that's that growth, right?
You're right.
So, okay.
A
And then,
super I mean, you can think of people, think of somebody that has filled their life with gratitude and maybe even has the third one of they're a very giving and loving person. But if they're never growing, I mean, isn't it clear that there's something missing there? Right?
yeah,
If they're just retired and hanging out in their lazy boy with the remote in their hand, but they say, "Oh, I love life," and sure, you can have the shirt off my back. We all innately know something's missing, that they could be giving of their time or their talent or their
yeah,
treasure of their knowledge or their experience in some way. So it's a critical component to the overall fulfillment process, knowing that you are growing or progressing in at least one or a few categories.
absolutely. It's having a purpose. Everybody needs to feel that they have a purpose. So that's why a lot of people don't like to retire. That was like a big thing way back, maybe not way back, but you know, time years ago where people just
Yeah,
were looking forward to retirement and now they're looking forward to that next thing because they
right.
realize like retirement can actually kill you. When you no longer
You're
have
right.
a purpose, you no longer have a drive to live. So it's
Yeah.
always important to have that purpose, even if it's going into the third G, which is giving, which is so important. So let's talk about that part of it.
Yeah, just a little bit more with the growth category. It's really
Okay.
weird. I mean, they've done all kinds of studies, right? I mean, especially on older men that retire and they tied all
Yeah.
their worth to their career, and now they've been sold the bag of goods that, oh, as soon as I can retire, then I can be happy. But now they're old and they don't feel very good, and so they can't really travel the world. So they sit in their lazy boy with a remote and then they die.
Yeah.
And I'm of course exaggerating here, but we get the point that if you don't have purpose, if you're not growing in some way, if you've attached your identity to something that is over, well, that's innately a problem. And this is the same case with people that become very wealthy when they're not very old, right? They're 30, 40 years old and they're worth hundreds of millions of dollars and they're like, okay, great. Or they sell their company
Hmm.
and oftentimes they tied a lot of their personal worth to that organization or the people in the organization or the game or the rush of it all, right? And so what do you do when you hit that phase in one of these two examples? My experience is that you need to keep growing,
Yeah.
and my personal way of doing so is finding something I'm very passionate about, very excited about, both a fulfillment formula and a poverty reduction formula, marrying those two and inviting others to get involved in the cause.
I love it. I love it. So we're going to go into the giving part now? Because I always say
Yeah,
that the whole thing of the law of the universe, we're talking about that is like the more you give, the more you receive, right?
yeah, it really is one of the biggest secrets of this life is giving. And I think that all of, I know for me, and I'm sure you and all of your listeners have had an experience of giving, right? It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be something grandiose to fall in the giving category. But oftentimes we give and we don't really realize that we're giving with an expectation, right? So it becomes a
Mm.
little bit of a business transaction, right?
Aha.
Hey, I'm going to do this for spouse, and I'm hoping or expecting that spouse does B for me. And
Right.
if that doesn't happen, we're a little bit pouty and like this, right? Hey, you were supposed to do the dishes, and you're supposed to give me a kiss when I get home, and whatever the thing is, right? Or that happens at work, that happens at church, with the neighbors, with the kids, with the spouse, with our family members, friends. Sometimes we give, and there's nothing wrong with it, but we need to realize that when we're giving with expectation, that's a business transaction. And so we just need to
Yeah.
put it out for what it is. What I'm talking about is giving without pretense, like
Yeah.
literally expecting nothing in return at all from the recipient of the gift. Because now what happens is you can give freely, and not
Yeah.
just of yourself, right? You can actually picture in your mind's eye that there's a conduit of light that comes from the heavens through you to others. And it allows you to give in some really weird ways that you wouldn't necessarily think about, because you can open your heart and your mind to looking and listening, and then being willing to take action and realizing that you're not responsible for the outcome. Because if you are, yeah, you hold back. I don't really know. I don't know how this is going to be received. That's a little
Oh,
awkward. Let
yeah.
me hold back. But if you realize that you're not responsible for the outcome, you're simply responsible to be a conduit for love and light to flow through. Now that's the only test. Are you a conduit for love and light to flow through? Right. And
I
we can
love that.
let me paint two examples here. Imagine that you have the opportunity to go to Disneyland with some loved ones, some little kids, your significant other, whatever. You go stand in line for 2 hours per ride and have the thrill of Disneyland. All kinds of fun things there, and it's a good experience. Or what if you had the opportunity with those exact same loved ones to select a single mother and go test drive a half a dozen vans, locate one, take the exact same amount of money that you would have paid for this trip, buy it, put a big red bow on it, pull it in front of her front yard, ring her doorbell, and hand her the keys and a title? I mean, imagine 1 year or 5 years later, what are your loved ones? How are they going to remember those two different experiences, right? And
Yeah.
my personal experience is that the giving without expectation, when you put your heart into it and invite love and light to flow through you, there is nothing so sweet in all the world. There really isn't. And it sounds like such a selfless thing to do. Oh,
Yeah.
you're so nice. You give without pretense. Well, good for you. You're a great person. Okay, that might be partially true, but the truth is that all of us humans require dopamine hits. And
Hmm.
sometimes in some circles, it is preached that if you're a great person, you'll be able to successfully oppress your need for dopamine hits. And I think that's the wrong approach. I think
Oh,
that rather we should be honest with the fact that we all need dopamine hits. But instead of going for the quick fixes of whatever it is, the alcohol, the cigarette, the pornography, the fill in the blank with all the quick fixes of the world that typically don't serve our future self, what if we're honest with ourselves and we say, hey, you know what? I do require dopamine hits, but instead of going for these quick fixes that don't serve my future self or those I love most, what if I filled it with things that gave me dopamine hits, but were good for me, my future self, and those I love most? This category
wow.
fills you with dopamine. I mean, we think about it right now. I
Yeah.
mean, you picture on your in your mind's eye that young mother's face when you hand her the keys and she looks at you and says, what is this? And you just say, this is yours. I mean, we all feel it. There's a dopamine hit that happens there. That goodness, that love and light, it serves the recipient for sure. And that's wonderful. And that's part of the equation. But the truth is, this is how we become fulfilled. We receive a dopamine hit when we give without expectations.
I love that. So it's a positive dopamine versus, yeah, the drugs or the alcohol or whatever it is. You
Yeah.
know,
That's
a
why
lot
we
of
even do the
people,
negatives, right?
yeah, a lot of people are addicted to, when you talk to like dating experts or relationship people, they're addicted to that, like that dopamine of why they keep talking to somebody who's not good for them. It's like that hit, that validation. But
Yes.
yeah, this is a great way. It's like addressing and accepting that we do need the dopamine, but how you're getting it is what you should focus on.
Yeah. It's one of the best ways to
It's
overcome
great.
addiction is
Oh
to
my
realize that
gosh,
when
absolutely.
you tell somebody that's dealing with said addiction, and of course there's all kinds that say an emotional affair, and there's a real dopamine that gets here. I mean, they get tingly throughout their body, and it's like it's a rush. And if you tell someone you don't need that dopamine hit, if you're a good person, you don't need dopamine hits. They're like,
Right.
uh, and then they feel even worse, and then they want to just get that dopamine hit to crawl out of the hole that they're in, just to feel regular for a minute, right? And that's what those negative dopamine hits feel so good, and then they drop you down, and then the next time it's not quite as high, and they drop you even lower,
Yeah.
and before you know it, they need that cigarette or that hit just to feel regular, right? And so it's a those that's when you know that it's a negative dopamine hit when you do it for an extended period of time, you need it to feel normal. It doesn't even feel good anymore. It just feels normal. And so,
Wow.
that's but when we recognize we need dopamine, how can we get dopamine in a way that is good for my present self, good for my future self, and good for
Mm-hmm.
those that I love most? Now it's a different game. Now it's like, okay, this is a good feeling. It's good, and it's good for me now, me tomorrow, and for those I love most. How can I go get more of this amazing sensation? The best way to do so is to give with no expectation on how the recipient will receive it, because you're not responsible for
Love
it.
that.
It's not about that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
maybe they benefit, hopefully they do, but it's about your willingness to be a conduit for love and light to flow through you. Just that willingness alone is what gives you that dopamine hit.
I love it. That was very, very well said. So let me ask you, what does success mean to you?
Yeah, well, my answer is different today than it was years ago. I like
Okay.
Warren Buffett's answer when you ask him that. His answer for being such a wealthy individual, he said, when you get into your 60s and 70s and 80s, if those people you love most love you back, you're rich.
Yeah.
So I would go along that line is success is building a life where you become the hero of your own journey. And that's not that you put a cape on, but it's that
Yeah.
you become the person that you're proud to be, right? And you're someone. Years ago I often thought, at least in a couple categories, pre-G Cube days, when I really had to decide what I believed, was that I had the capacity to, in some categories, have my cake, but also eat just a little bit of it and kind of dance that line in life, so to speak. And it only worked some. And honestly, it left me with lackluster passion. And it hit me one day that, you know what? I should not be following the counsel that I would give myself, because sometimes I think a little bit too much of myself. I feel like, well, I don't need to go to that event. Oh, I can be a little bit lazy today. Oh, I don't have to read that book. Fill in the blank with, I can still be a good person and fill in the blank.
Okay.
But oftentimes I would never recommend that that's how my children live. And so I realized I should not be following the counsel that I would give myself. I should be following the counsel that I would give my children. And
Yeah.
I can't say that there's a ton of adjustments from the outside perspective, but from the inside perspective, quite a few adjustments occurred that allowed me to change just a couple degrees. And when you go many, many miles in an airplane, just a couple degrees different, you end up in a very different destination.
I love that. Yeah, absolutely. No, it's very well said. And before we wrap it up, when I was digging around on your website, you had one of the quotes that I originally learned from, from watching Tony Robbins, and he's an amazing, amazing leader and teacher and speaker and author and all that good stuff. But
Yes, he is.
one of his favorite things he said, and that was on your website, was that, life is happening for you, not to you. But you
Yeah.
had it where life happens to you or for you. So talk a little bit more about this.
Yeah. So it's one of Tony Robbins, I don't know him personally, but he has become one of my mentors over the years,
Yeah.
right? He's taken ideas from other individuals and made them uh, so that anyone can understand the concepts,
Right.
right? Gandhi or Jesus or whoever, he's made them into little bite-sized pieces that can resonate with the common individual, and it's changed my life for the positive. And this concept that the to answer your question, I'll answer it with a question of what is the purpose of life? And I just invite everyone to really think about that. And I've thought about this a lot.
Uh,
And I think that we're sold very frequently that the purpose of life is 100 things over in this category, but all of them are tied to our circumstances. And I would
mm,
imagine for a moment that you are blessed enough to be an old woman or an old man, and you're on your deathbed. You feel okay, but you know that your demise is inevitable and
yeah.
it's right around the corner, right? And you have your loved ones, your spouse, your best friend, your son, your daughter, whoever these people are, around your bed and holding your hand for your last moments. And if you have the ability to look up at these people that you love so much right before you go, what is it that you want for these people that you love so much? Is it the things that the world tells you that you should want for yourself? The fast car and the guys and the girls and the fame and the fortune and the movie stars and all of the, winning gold in the Olympics? Well, if you go through this exercise, which I have gone through it, my experience has been no, that's not what I want for those that I love very most. So what is it? What is the thing that I would want very most for my loved ones in this moment? It's this one thing. It's that they have the capacity to struggle well. That no matter
Wow.
their circumstances, no matter how good or bad their circumstances are, if I looked at my daughter right in that moment and her circumstances were amazing with a wonderful husband and children and fill in the blanks with all the amazing things. And if I knew that the only way that she would remain happy or fulfilled is if her circumstances were amazing, that would be heavy on my heart. But if she had the capacity to struggle well, that means that she is in control of her own fulfillment level for the rest of her
Wow.
existence. No matter if her husband is unfaithful, she gets diagnosed with cancer, a business partner cheats on her and she has to file bankruptcy. All of the things that could pile on us and have for us, all of us in a variety of ways. If we have the capacity, if those you love most have the capacity to struggle well, they are in control of their fulfillment forever.
I
And I think
love
that's
that.
the greatest gift that we would want for those that we care about most. And so that if we move in reverse, that's the greatest gift we could give ourselves is the ability, the capacity to struggle well. And my personal opinion is that the objective of this life is not to
Yeah.
acquire, the objective of this life is to become. It's not the destination, it's the journey of trying to get to the destination. That's why we named our charity Become More, with a
Yeah.
greater sign pointing towards the become and away from the more. Because the objective of this life, my belief, is to become more like the best version of you, or to become more like God.
Yeah. Amen. So well said. All right. So where can people learn more about you, Grab G Cubed, all that good stuff?
Yeah, well, you can grab G Cubed, on Amazon or where any good books are sold. Audible, I do the voice for G Cubed, so that's my way of learning is Audible. So that's my favorite. But you can
Perfect.
also go to gcubeformula.com. There's all kinds of options. We have an online training course of how to become more fulfilled. It specializes in really helping corporations that are looking to be able to help their team members become more fulfilled in a quantifiable way they can show their board. Hey, look,
Hmm.
our team's average fulfillment score was 61. And after those that finished the course, it was now 82, right? They can actually quantify the fulfillment side. And then in addition, if you want to learn more about Become More, the charity, and what we're doing here locally on fulfillment, or what we're doing in Cambodia on adopting villages and
Yeah.
attempting to create a formula to reduce poverty, you can go to becomemmorecharity.org.
Okay. I love that. And we're going to have you back on because I want to talk about the poverty part of it because it's something that, a lot of is affecting a lot of people. And if we can get that figured out, gosh, huge. So I think that's a whole episode right there.
Awesome. Well, I would love to be. It's been a pleasure being here with you today.
Yeah, you are absolutely amazing. You're inspiring. I loved your advice. I know that all the listeners are just going to take something away from this that's going to make their life better. And that's what we aim to do on the Next to Madison podcast. So thank you so much for being my guest. And
Absolutely.
thank you to everyone who's listening. We'll see you next time to find out who's next.
Hey, your host here, Madison Malloy. Please make sure to subscribe to the show on all podcast platforms and please rate and review us on iTunes and Spotify. Also, if you have any questions or comments, you can email us at contact@nexttomadison.com. I thank you again for listening. Bye.